Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the seventh episode of the Elouise Show. Today, we will be focusing on gun violence. Our guest today is Hasani Henderson. Hasani Henderson is a 27-year-old male hailing from Chicago's South Side, affectionately known as the Low End, something I learned recently. He's a University of Missouri alum with a bachelor's in journalism with a focus in advertising, public relations, and media. While he's currently working at Pandora Media, he is the founder of the Take Back Shy. This is his passion. He founded this nonprofit organization in 2014. Through this initiative, he provides resources to youth in underserved neighborhoods through an annual back-to-school festival. Since 2014, he and his team has provided over 3,500 youth with school supplies, free meals, scholarships, and community resources. And last but not least, and I gotta mention this because anybody who knows me knows that this is like my thing too. He is a red wine connoisseur, per his own judgment, with which he thoroughly enjoys, and he also enjoys cooking and listening to, but of course, R&B. Hasani, how are you doing? Welcome to the Elouise Show.
Hello, I'm well. Happy to be here. How are you?
You know, just living my best life on this wonderful Wednesday. Okay. So the Take Back Shy, like I just feel like we would be remiss to not just get right into it. Okay. So what inspired you to found the Take Back Chicago? And is the formal name hashtag the Take Back Shy, or is it just the Take Back?
So the hashtag is there on all marketing and anything written, but just speaking is just the take back. So,
Okay. Well, let's
so the take back.
What inspired the Take Back?
Yeah. So the take back was inspired from a place of pain. Unfortunately, I lost someone who was very dear to me back in 2011 while he was playing basketball in the park, broad daylight, on a beautiful summer day. And back then, I was still in college, and I didn't really know what I can do, or I couldn't really wrap my brain around what was going on. But after I graduated in 2014, a group of friends and myself, we were kind of just tired of hearing all the negativity that circled around Chicago, especially when it comes to the South Side and the underserved neighborhoods. And we just vowed that we would try to do something about it. We didn't know what that something would look like, but we came together and decided that to take back, trying to influence the youth at the early age and try to promote that peace and positivity from a young age would be the best way to kind of make a long-term effect and to try to shape the kids' lives younger. So.
Okay, but why the Take Back? Why the name the Take Back? Break it down for me.
So
Like
the take back is because
but I think I know, but I may have no idea, so you gotta break it down for me.
Yeah, so we take back because we're taking back the streets from gun violence, from negativity, and giving it to the kids. So it's literally the take back because it's a movement, not a moment. So it's the take back of like taking back of what's really belonged to the kids and the youth. So.
And from your definition or from your organization's definition, what belongs to the youth? What do they deserve?
They deserve to go out and play and be in positive places without the threat of the violence, the gang life, and all those things that may be around their neighborhoods. But they deserve to be able to go out and just be kids, and just have a great childhood.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned gang life because I know, like, I hail from New York. I've lived in like the Bronx. I've lived in Brooklyn. I've lived in Newburgh. Shout out to Newburgh. And like gang violence is like gangs are a big thing here on the East Coast, especially in New York. But the rumor is, and you can dispel this rumor if you can, but the rumor is that gangs aren't a big issue in Chicago. Like gun violence is a big issue in Chicago, but it's not always gang related.
Yeah, I'm going to have to nip that in the bud because I think that in Chicago, there are many little gangs here and there, factions of a couple main gangs. And I think that what happened is, if people from Chicago probably know this, GD was mainly South Side, East Side, little GDK, BD, things of that nature, and then Latin Kings were on the other side. But I know you don't know what all this means, but
yeah, you need to repeat that for me because that's new. Because over here, like Bloods, Crips, like that's what I know. But what? What did you just say?
So you don't even need to worry about all those terms. Basically, though, is what I believe happened was leadership started getting removed from power in certain ways, mainly jail, obviously. And when that happens, it was a trickle down effect. So when they don't have a true leader to kind of guide them in like the gang world, that what happens is these smaller groups start forming little factions of like a higher, broader gang, but they aren't performing in the same type of morality. They aren't performing in the same type of regulations and rules because there isn't any leadership to oversee them. So what has happened is there is still gang life, but you'll hear 5 different gangs all living within the same area and kind of going bickering back and forth, doing things of that nature, shooting at each other across the street. And I think that from what I learned and what I was, what I was involved with when I was younger is very, very different than what I see today, because it was a code of ethics that was still always there. And today is just like, to your point, I think that there is a lot of gun violence and there is a lot of just random shootings and people, not showing self-control. But it also is still gangs are still very prevalent. It's just very different than what we kind of grew up on or what some people in this area kind of knew when they were growing up. So.
All right. So before we even really get into like this gun violence conversation, it is 2020. We are still in the midst of this pandemic. I'm really, really curious about how, because, I feel like around this time, typically you would be having, your back to school event.
Yes.
Or if not having it right now, you'd be preparing for it. So how has this pandemic affected your yearly back to school event? And what are some of the things that the Take Back Shy is doing to push forward its initiative since, you guys had to adjust?
Right. Yeah. So unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we weren't able to host an annual festival like we usually do. It was definitely a disappointing and disheartening realization that we had to come to. But to pivot, we decided to give larger scholarships, and we also gave away over 300 masks to the community at large. So we try to still do something that's impactful, but something that also doesn't require someone to be in a huge park surrounded by hundreds of people. So yeah, we're giving it.
So essentially the same initiative, it's just, dispersed as opposed to localized.
Yeah, so we've given $2,500 in scholarships and we give $500 per family. So, but this was not just because of school supplies or academic related. We give them $500 to do almost what they really need, because in these times, it's hard to say that the only thing they need is school supplies. It's like some people need to pay a light bill, some people need a little help on rent. So we want to make that a little more broader this year, especially because of the COVID and because of all the rioting and looting and things of that nature that have happened. That could be
Yeah,
also affecting people.
how is you bring something up that I honestly didn't even consider. Like, how has been like rioting, looting, and over a protest been over there in Chicago?
Yeah, it's been wild. Will be 100% honest with you. Just this past weekend, as you know, there's some controversy about what exactly happened, but either way, it caused or it led to rioting downtown area back on the south side and other areas of Chicago. So I think that it's been is we're at a tipping point. So at this juncture, it's everything seems to be let's go to the looting and rioting. But it's been a roller coaster really in Chicago between the pandemic and then all the Black Lives Matter movement and everything of the protesting. It's just been
Okay.
crazy.
So speaking of protests, speaking of the pandemic, speaking of the entire Black Lives Matter movement, and then on today's theme.
Okay.
According to USA Today article, shootings are up 53%, 53% in New York City, according to police. In Atlanta, shootings were up 23%, 23%. And in Chicago, shootings have increased 46% from previous years. So I read another article, I believe it was a New York Times article, but don't quote me on that, where it was talking about the fact that gun violence was like through the roof in the 1990s. But since the 1990s, the way it is this year, even though it's significantly lower than the 90s, we are at the highest gun violence that we've seen since the 90s. So with all that said, what do you believe are the contributing factors in the increase of violence, of gun violence, specifically this summer 2020? Fill me in. What you think?
Well, I think that in essence, we always have to go back to this systemic discrimination, systematic racism, because the reason that these guns are even in the neighborhoods that they're in and how they're being used is a larger, bigger discussion. But it doesn't stem from us wanting to essentially kill our own or tear up our neighborhoods. It comes from a place of need and a place of hunger and things of that nature. So it's like I can understand why it's increasing or why it has increased in recent years, but it all boils down to we were put in a position that wasn't favorable for anyone, and we were expected to sink or swim. And sometimes not all of us have the luxury of being able to get out of those type of environments. And when you put people in those type of environments and you pump drugs and all these other things into their neighborhoods, don't give them the same access to opportunities, then they resort to other means of getting money, getting power, respect, things of that nature.
So okay, because like I hear what you're saying, but my question is like, why are we killing each other? But towards the end of what you're saying is like, at the end of the day, everyone's trying to get money, everyone's trying to get power. So do you think that gun violence is directly linked to like money and power, essentially?
I think that in essence, I can't speak for, everyone or everyone who is out here,
Chitty chitty bang banging.
Yeah, performing and in the life. But I do think that definitely there's a common factor with when it comes to people who are in that type of life. And it's usually to get some type of monetary or leadership, some type of a gain out of it. It's not like people are just, gang banging just because. Usually it's something that they want out of it, even if it's just respect, even if it's to be called like the biggest game banger in Chicago. It's something that they want out of it. And I think that
I mean, I honestly, wholeheartedly, I hear you, man. I completely hear you. It's just sometimes like I wonder if it's even really that deep, because from the New York perspective, or even from like scratch the New York perspective, from like a criminology perspective, right? A criminologist will tell you that
lay it on.
a criminologist will tell you that violence, period, increases in the summertime. Number one, specifically gun violence, especially in inner cities. So the question behind the why of the increase in gun violence, a criminologist will say, you have a lot of people who have been stuck inside of their apartments all winter. The summer allows them to come outside. However, it's hot, right? So when you're hot, you're naturally bothered. You're already on edge, right? So it doesn't take much for you to like snap. Take the fact that you've been, locked up essentially all winter, like that's why violence increases specifically in the summertime. So I find that like fact interesting. And then you take into account that people were just like extra locked up this winter because of the pandemic. Right. No actual human interaction, or just very, very limited human interaction, depending on where you live, especially if you live in an inner city, what the makeup of your family is, what the makeup of your household is. In New York specifically, you could be in a 2-bedroom apartment with like 9 other people. So summertime comes, you could go outside like,
and you hot,
you bothered, and
agitated.
So like when it comes to that, it's very discouraging, because like you take into account like, so that's pandemic perspective, that's like circumstance perspective, but then you take into account what's happening with us culturally, in terms of where we are, even like we'll say culturally and historically. There are just so many reasons to not act out right now. Like Black lives are under a microscope, and so when you have people screaming Black Lives Matter, and you have people marching, and you have people protesting and even rioting to like avenge deaths, or to like make a statement against injustices, when we have us killing ourselves, like it's just like a major disservice to the cause, It's just, Obama who's behind you, Malcolm who's behind you, and I believe you got Martin behind your head right there. Like they would just all be so disappointed. So yeah, like I just like, so that's from a criminology perspective. You're saying like it's for a reason. I don't know that I believe it's always for a reason.
I don't think it's always for for us. It's not always for a logical reason. Like even if the reasoning is just at the bare minimum because I wanted to, it's still essentially, it's not logical for us because it feels like that's outside of common sense, right? But for a 16-year-old who is in the inner city, in the neighborhood, that they kind of think that it's fun, it's a game, So,
but you know what, Hasani? You know what? I want to tell that 16-year-old, if that 16-year-old is in New York, I want to tell that 16-year-old to calm their butt down. You know what I'm saying? Reach out to an organization that's trying to mentor somebody in the youth. Ask them to take them to like Best Thai Fish Fry in New York, or what was that spot you was telling me about in Chicago?
Talk about Mickey's.
Mickey's. All right, hold up. Let me pull it up real quick so that everybody could see, because they need to be put on into these places, because these places are fire. Not our fire, they or fire. Hold on. Let me see. Let me get
nice
this.
Little, black-owned burger joint, you know.
Black-owned burger joint. Look, that's us on the screen. What? Okay, so this is Bed-Stuy Fish Fry. That's not a burger joint. They got multiple locations in New York. I love this place. I always get their shrimp and chips platter. But by chips, they obviously mean French fries. These are their locations. I specifically love getting from the Bed-Stuy location in Halsey. I just don't understand how you order from Bed-Stuy Fish Fry in like Crown Heights. That don't make no sense. But on the Chicago end of things, all right, you got Mickey's Retro Grill. You a burger head over here. Mm-hmm. Which one do you get? You get the classic Rico.
I get the classic and the turkey burger.
And the turkey burger. Okay, so they got quite the things. Oh, what's that?
Yeah, but if I'm feeling a little adventurous, I get that nacho burger. So it's pretty different.
Nacho burger?
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot. Grilled onions, turkey, bacon, nacho cheese, mushrooms, jalapenos, Rico's mild. So that's clearly a cheat day. This is a cheat day spot. But the cool thing that we found out when I was looking at this earlier is that they have a location opening in Atlanta. So if anyone's tuning in from Atlanta, you could definitely taste the flavors of Mickey's in Atlanta.
Because everything open anyway, right?
You know, stop turning up on people. Find somebody. There's people out here. That's the crazy part too. I feel like when you're growing up, especially when you're growing up within an inner city, you don't realize how many people, because it's not told to you, but you don't realize how many people are actually out here trying to help you, like looking for you to help you to make sure you're not out here in these streets, you know, chitty bang banging. That's my term for it.
Chitty bang banging.
Chitty bang banging. And I think it's interesting too, because so I was watching, what was it? I saw a meme on Instagram, right? I love Instagram to an extent. I love like viewing on Instagram. I feel like posting on Instagram is so stressful. But I saw a meme on Instagram. I believe it was David Banner, and it said something along the lines of, you know, Black Lives Matter just as much when cops are killing us as when we're killing us, you know, bringing up the conversation of Black on Black crime. But I think that like that Black on Black crime, that ideology has been a conversation since before today, you know, that's always been an issue. Stop Black on Black crime. Black people like to kill each other. Well, let's take it back to criminologists, right? I remember I took, you know, I took one class.
You and your criminology bag from this one class though.
This one class, and I will say loudly and proudly that it's only one class. But I just, you know, that one class was like so insightful to me because there were so many, it dispelled so many like just so much that I thought, so many facts that I thought that I knew. So for instance, I used to be anti-Black on Black crime until I learned in this class that every race has crime on itself. Like, so, so for instance, like anything that's super violent, 9 times out of 10, you know the person, you know that person's within your neighborhood, that person's part of your religion. So like Black on Black crime exists, sure, but so does white on white crime, so does Jew on Jew crime, so does Chinese on Chinese crime. Like not an epidemic like people try to make it out to see.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there, from my point of view and from the history books, it's not a lot of people of color who are, committing terrorist acts and serial killers and shooting up schools. I just don't think that that's something that I've seen in my lifespan of hearing people of color being the culprits of terrorist activities of those nature. Like it just doesn't happen.
I think
So
you raised some interesting points too, because you will always hear about people, like a black person dying at the hands of another black person, or dare I say, a black person dying at the hands of a cop.
mhm.
But you won't hear so much about the same number of white people dying at the hands of other white people. It's almost
Yeah,
like black on black crime, or specifically gun violence as it relates to black people, is glorified and pushed into the media.
of course.
And then it makes you wonder, why? Why do you think?
So I'm not about to get all conspiracy, hotep, and all that good stuff, but I do think that the system was created by a certain group for a certain group to continuously excel, and for other groups to be seen as problematic, as violent, as inferior. So the media is ran by a certain group of people, our fair skinned counterparts.
I mean,
So
you don't have to say it. Nick Cannon already said it for us. He's reaping the negative, the repercussions of his
yeah,
word. But it's a fact. You can do the research and you can see the conglomerates that exist, and you can see that the media is ran predominantly by Jews, and you can see that if you say anything that's what's the word, anti-Semitic.
Semitic. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. I don't use that word often, so it's not a word that I would roll off the tongue for me. But if you say something that's anti-Semitic, your shit will get shut down. But we don't have that in our community. We don't have a legitimate platform that is by us, for us, where we can express ourselves honestly and openly, without fearing how it's going to come back to bite us in the ass at the end, no matter how true what we have to say is.
well, I think that we, in essence, the way media is consumed now is very, very different because, essentially, I think that what BET was like for a good amount of time. It was that voice for the black people, for us to see us on the screen in movies and TV and things of that nature. But what has happened is a shift in how we consume media and how we're portrayed in media on these different platforms now. So,
Wait, pause. Let's dissect that. How are we consuming media right now?
well, I think that for myself and other black people that I know, we are able to consume media on video, Fire Stick, all these other platforms that isn't your original broadcast, cable, things of that nature. So with that, we've also seen a surge of much more black programming on all these different outlets, on these different channels, these different companies broadcast. So they are attempting to cater to us much more today than they did when BET was the on top, and it was that was our place. But now we can consume media that we feel is, commensurate to us in many other places.
I like that you said attempting to cater to us. I know it might not have been intentional to say it that way, but I think it's beautiful that you said it that way, because so I noticed that now on these different platforms there is literally a black section. Sometimes it overtly says black movies, but I think at one point Hulu had a section that said black movies, but they took that shit down.
But Netflix has it right now for sure. They have a whole.
They changed the wording so that it's more 2020 friendly. But like you see their attempt of showing us what Black movies are, but then we get into this like modern day coon bag, where it's like all these movies that they're showcasing are kind of like caricatures of Black people and not actual Black characters. Some of them are, they're just poorly shot, and then some of them are like shot amazingly well, but like the script is just terrible, you know? And it's like, you can't tell me that like we in an age where we have what's my guy's name that he's the director and writer behind Ryan. Oh, this is killing
about
Coogler. Right? In the age of the Ryan Cooglers, the Ava DuVernays of the world, the Issa Rays of the world, you can't tell me that we can't get some legit amazing Black content. Wait, but time out. Shout out to Issa Rae and the last season of Insecure, which I think like all seasons of Insecure have been amazing, but this last season, I was in my bag for no reason. I had no reason to feel away, but I felt all the feels.
Now we have to talk about this offline. You team Issa or Molly this last season, because I got some things I need to say, you know?
Yeah, and it doesn't exactly correlate to gun violence. Well, then she had that one episode. Oh no, at the end of her block party, somebody pulled a gun and they were like, you see, this is why Black people can't never have shit.
Yep. I remember.
But it's interesting because it's the truth. Like people, but it's the same scenario we talked about earlier. Like they're out, it's summertime, it's hot. People are bothered. What? Somebody bumped into somebody stepped on somebody's shoe. Next thing you know, there's a gun out. Like, why? Why does somebody have to die because they stepped on your shoes? And I don't understand. Like my major questions are like, how are these guns getting into our neighborhoods? If it's an impoverished neighborhood, if it's an inner city, like how are the guns even getting here? Right? Number one. Number two, like, why are we so mad? Like I can answer from a psychological perspective why I believe we're so mad and all the resources that I believe that we need to like calm the fuck down. But with all the therapy in the world, you know, and all the government assistance in the world, I don't really feel like we'll see real change in the way that we interact with each other until like there are some major systematic changes. Like you could be talking through your situation, but if your situation remains the same, like
yeah, I agree.
It doesn't really help.
I mean, to your first kind of question, like how are the guns getting into the neighborhood? Thing is like it's we for damn sure aren't bringing them into neighborhoods. Like so that in itself should be a red flag. And then to your second point, I think that yes, the access to opportunities, the equity is key. But we also have got to understand that someone. Well, I'm gonna hop into my sociology bag real, for a little bit. But
that bag.
Yeah, a mentor of mine gave me just like a scenario or a comparison. He was telling me how, the Holocaust was, couple decades or whatever. And there are still people who have PTSD, who still have the effects of trauma to this day for something that happened. I'm not going to say a short amount of time, but for that time period. Now you have to think, slavery was hundreds of years. And we are just on the beginning end of being quote unquote free and, being able to do things in the same breath of other people who are of other cultures. So we will continue to feel the impact and have that trauma for a very, very long time. Now, I'm not saying that we will never get to a point where we, can feel less afflicted, but it will not be something that's overnight. It won't happen in 50 years. It won't happen in 100 years. It will take much more time. And it will also take for those people who do believe in that ideology to low key die off, and then the teachings that they have already instilled into their grandkids and their grandkids, it will take some time for them to catch up to the rest of the world, saying that we are all really created equal and we all deserve the same type of opportunities and access to those opportunities, So
have you read by any chance the Willie Lynch letter?
Yes.
So for anyone who's paying attention, anyone who's watching right now, the Willie Lynch letter is an unverified document that you should definitely Google and read, because it's kind of like mind-blowing.
It'll piss you off. It'll piss you off.
Oh, I was so mad.
It'll piss you off.
Okay, so I had
and even what's worse than what he was saying, it's like, unfortunately, it has held some truth, and that is what hurts even more.
So when you read the Willie Lynch letter, it basically, it's the tagline for it is how to make a slave. I might be like messing up the like actual name of it, but it's like how to make a slave. And in the letter, he says, if you follow my directions, you're going to see the effects of this for, I forget how many hundreds of years he says. And when I read the letter, I must have read the letter maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It wasn't actually too long ago. And I did the math and I was like, yo, like this guy is literally an evil genius. And you could not tell me that somebody didn't like think this shit through and read this letter, because I'm looking at society today and I'm like, everything he wrote down right now is exactly what's happening with, Black America, Black people in general. Because when we talk, the effects of colonialism, like that's not just like we here in America as Black people, we talk about the effects because we probably saw the worst of it. However, our brothers and sisters in Africa, they reap the effects of colonialism as well. Like South Africa, probably horribly, West Africa, very horribly. Like, but then you have to think of the way everything works across the continent. They were literally stealing, kidnapping people from other parts, other countries, filtering them through West Africa, and then sending them across, the ocean to bring them over here, the Caribbean a lot. And South America, shout out to South America, who needs to acknowledge the fact that they too are African. But like this shit, the African, I'm sorry, I dropped a lot just now. Too much. Too much. But like the effects of colonialism, like we all feel it, it's just, I feel like Black America acknowledges it the most. We're most vocal about it right now, from my perspective, and I think that, and I just brought up the Willie Lynch letter because I think that I hate to say this, but I have to. So I think that gun violence, from my perspective, is actually very much rooted in insecurity. I think that there was a time today's Wednesday, Tuesday, I saw a fight, Bushwick. And I saw a fight like I haven't seen a fight in maybe like in like 30 years, not like 20 years, 20 some odd years, right? Because in this fight, it was like two men fighting each other, no weapons, just hands, right? Fighting each other. There's a bunch of people watching the fight and they're backing up to get out of the way, letting these two people fight. And then when that fight got out of control, somebody jumped in to stop it. I haven't seen something like that in a long time. And not saying that I advocate violence in any way, shape, or form. However, I feel like today you have a lot of gun violence because people don't know how to fight. So like you'll disrespect somebody or you'll, exert your masculinity or your force or whatever. And
Mhm.
that person feels the need to go and get their protections because they don't feel so secure with themselves to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Um,
I I I I agree. I think that most violence comes from insecurity. Like it's I think it's uncommon for someone to be secure in themselves and know that they don't need to fight or need to resort to those measures because they're so sure in themselves and confident in who they are that whatever this person is saying, doing, it doesn't get them to that point. Now, I understand that sometimes violence sometimes does need to, it is necessary. It's a necessary evil sometimes, but to your point, I think that especially with gun violence today, is so rampant because first of all, they're way too easily accessible. And then on top of that, it's being like used by people who don't really know how to either defend themselves. They don't know how to properly use these firearms. And like you said, they aren't really confident in who they are to say, like, I'll just fight. Like I come from a time I will fight before I get any type of weapon. And if I lose, look,
fair
I
ones.
lost. I lost. But today, like you said, versus saying let's box this out like men, it's let me go get this weapon that can potentially, have long-term effects as opposed to
You ever listen to the stories of like people in the 80s talking about how like late 70s, like 70s and 80s talking about like life back then and that like they'll talk about fights with their best friends and they'll be like, yeah, after that fight we became best friends.
yeah,
What?
yeah. But I think that today I promise you I can probably get into a fist. I have gotten into fist fights with some of my close friends, and we are still good today because it's like you even have like a certain level of respect for them because
After the fight.
yeah, it's like okay, yeah. I mean, if we get into it in a bar or a club or something, I know you can hold yourself. I know you got me. Like
It's different because I'm a woman, but I've been in a situation where a woman has tried to fight me. And after that, I was like, I am so good on this. And all of that toxic energy that you have, we're good. Peace
see,
out.
but
She the best, sis.
that's a difference between
Men
that's
and
another conversation in itself.
I'm not getting into fights with my friends. I'm not doing that.
I mean, I don't want
And
to,
you guys,
but
male species is an entire different, whatever. That's not today's episode. What I did
right.
want to ask you though, on today's topic is what are your thoughts on the presidential candidates' stances on gun control? Have you heard much about like what they believe?
Yeah. So Biden and Harris, they're both like I agree with their policy and what they are looking to push. So
Anyone who's listening and doesn't know their policy, can you just like sum it up for them?
yeah, so for the most part, Biden and Kamala, they both feel like there should be much stricter um, regulations on who can actually procure a firearm. And they also feel like anyone with a firearm has to be licensed, like regardless, right? They also have this something that I read about where to fire it, you would have to like put your fingerprint on it or something of that nature, which is very interesting. I don't know how that would actually work in real time, but I think that that is something that can probably be factored in going, in the future. And then they're both just very, very against just the assault rifles and people just being able to have those huge machine guns and things of that nature. Because from my standpoint, I think it's unnecessary. There's no reason for someone to have a AK-47 in their room. Like it doesn't. That's not your Second Amendment right to bear arms. That's excessive. Like
Excessive as fuck. But I have a question. So like I'm all for regulations, but the thing about regulations is there's like a catch-22, right? So
mhm.
if you have to be vetted to have a firearm, right? Um, isn't it possible that it, like for instance, let's say there's like a psychological exam you have to pass, right, in order to have this firearm. But isn't it possible that you have, if you have certain, like if you live in a certain environment or, have enjoyed a certain circumstances that they'll basically deny you? For instance, let's say a woman wanted to get a firearm, right? Let's say that this woman comes from a history of abuse, or this woman comes from like, maybe she's been raped in the past, right? So she
Mhm.
decides, I want to get a gun license. I want to have a gun in my own home just in case something happens. I can protect myself. But
Right.
that same reason that she wants to get that gun can be the same reason that she's not allowed to have her gun.
Yeah.
Because now, because she's been a victim of abuse, or because she's been, whether it be sexual or domestic, it's real easy for a government official to say, you do not meet the requirements to have this firearm. Much like if you live, let's say, in an inner city and there's
Mhm.
a lot of gang violence where you're at, and you're like, it's not like I'm gonna walk out in the street and have this gun out, shooting everybody, but like I just want to have it in my home just in case somebody tries to run up in my home, like, and I can protect my family.
Right.
Because you live in this inner city, they're gonna say based on your zip code, we have to reduce the amount of guns that are there. So you are not allowed to have a gun, right? So I don't like, I think that that's kind of unfair. Like it'll be real easy to like make restrictions or restrict people that don't exactly deserve those restrictions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that that is a valid point, and but I think that it also has to be almost a case by case basis. It's like I don't think that everyone should have like the blanket same type of um not requirements, but for you, like you said, that is a very, very specific, and that is um a very real and valid reason. Now, with that being said, I think that that should be taken into account when that person is applying to, get the license and get the car, FOIA card, all of those things. So it should be every person gets a true personalized examination, and that kind of goes forward. I think that for me, training is necessary for anyone who gets a gun. They have to have X amount of hours of training before they can be actually given they have to get licensed, all these things. So
Honestly, I think you need to train for your gun like you train for your degree.
yeah. So, but I'm also like I'm a strong proponent of like no guns. Like I think places like Europe, I'm like
I'm pro gun. I'm really pro gun, but I'm pro gun with regulations. I do believe that there should be regulations. I just think creating regulations are really tricky because um, if you're not very careful of what exactly those regulations are, you leave room for discrimination.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
but I'm definitely pro gun, especially in the day and age that we live in. Also, well, I'm not even gonna get into that because that's when you get into conspiracy theorist bag. But like, I'm definitely pro gun. I think that everyone should have the right to bear arms. I think that there should be a gun in every household. I think that every American should be trained in how to use a gun. Every single American. I think we should, but beyond guns, I think every single American should be trained in how to fight and defend themselves, period. But I'm definitely pro-gun. I'm not really with the, automatic weapons. I think a simple firearm in the household is okay.
Yeah.
Just be a good shot, learn how to be a good shot. It only takes one bullet. You don't need 16 to take one down. You just need one.
Oh, you should tell the cops that. I said you should tell the cops that.
I mean, I've had conversations with officers. They don't really like my perspective, mostly. I've had officers who've agreed with me. I won't put their business out there.
I mean,
but speaking about so I'm pro-gun, but you're anti-gun, which I completely understand and respect.
I wouldn't say I'm anti-gun.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I do feel like there needs to be just more regulation and restrictions on who and how you get them.
Yeah.
There needs to be training, and there also just in my mind, there is no need for assault rifles and military grade guns if it's really just for you to protect your home and your family. There's no reason why you need something that sprays, 5 bullets a second.
No
if it's really just
no need for the brat.
Yeah, you don't need a nah, we don't need that.
It's not a funny issue, but I have to make light of the conversation because I just can't. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the solution for decreasing gun violence rates? What do you think we can do to stop everything?
Yeah, well, some of the things I just spoke on. I think that unfortunately, I think that with where we are today, the U.S. in general was built on violence and guns, and the U.S. basically bullying and being able to just overpower all these other places. So
wait. Are you referencing how they came here and they were like, "This our land now"? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean, not just that. I think that over time and time again, when you talk about wars and anytime we've gotten into it with another continent, country, or a government, it's usually like U.S. is like, well, we got this for you. If you want to come over here and try something.
That's how you feel? Well,
that's just how the U.S. works. It's like, it's brute force, and that's how we say that we're the best, we're the biggest, we're the greatest. It's because we feel like our military can smoke anybody else's.
I honestly feel like that's why we all need to be trained in how to defend ourselves and why we all have guns in our homes. Because one day our military will fail us and people will come into our country, and we need to be prepared for that. Just in case. I feel like some countries are prepared for that and we are not.
I think that there definitely needs to be more training, but I also think that, like I said, it's going to be very hard to regulate now because, there's so many just guns out here on the streets that aren't licensed, that aren't registered. So it's going to be very hard to regulate something that has been so not unregulated, but so loosely regulated for so many years, so long. So it's just like with marijuana. Yes, there are dispensaries. Yes, there's legal ways to get it now, but at the end of the day, weed has been getting grown and sold for such a long time that you cannot expect for everyone to go the legal route. As much as we want to and we would love that to happen, it's just not feasible anymore. And I think that unfortunately that's going to be very similar with guns. It's like, no matter what the regulations and what the rules and limitation that you put on people, because this has been baked into the U.S. culture for so long, there will still be a lot of bad shit. So
I just had a whole bunch of like questions and comments that I have for what you just said, but I just realized the time. We have 5 minutes, and I got two questions I want to ask you before our time is up. The first one is, so how do you think the Take Back contributes to, like, you know, the solution of essentially gun control or reducing gun violence? Like, how does your initiative like help?
So we've always thought about it as a proactive versus a reactive approach. And we say that because we want to get the kids young when they're 5 through 16 years old. We want to like nurture them and show them that there are other ways and there are people who are in the community who care about you and want to give back so that they hopefully one day can see that that is a better way to be in these situations, even if they are coming from the worst place or very, very violent neighborhoods. It's like we want to show them that that isn't the all be all, and you can kind of find ways outside of that to find inspiration and people who care about you and can mentor you and show you that that way isn't necessarily the best way. So it's like we want to catch them young, train them up.
No, I feel you on that. That's exactly what gangs do.
But the Take Back ain't a gang though.
It's not a gang, but like you get what I'm saying. But that's essentially that's gang recruitment 101. They catch them young and train them up. And I think that anyone who is trying to like counteract that or be proactive about, reducing gun violence, reducing violence in neighborhoods, like decreasing gang violence, like, flipping the script, is you have to use that same ideology. You have to catch them up and train them up. You know what I'm saying? Like teach kids that education is cool young, teach them that, reading is cool young, teach them about their power and how they can use it to push forward their purpose. You know what I'm saying? Teach them about their history and how they can affect change, and how everything starts at the right now.
Yep.
Obama decided he was going to be president in middle school, not in college.
Yeah.
You got to write your own history.
Everybody don't keep pushing the agenda that you got to be a ball player or an athlete. Like tell them that they can be a doctor and mean it. Like tell them that they can be the president and mean it.
My godson, he's a brilliant child. He's super, super smart. And competitive too, right? But he's not just competitive in terms of sports, like he's competitive in everything. Like, so he wants to learn spades and like he'll play adults and he'll want to be the best at it. Like you're a child, like you're not.
I like this kid already.
Like he learns math and he wants to know like double
launch codes and NASA.
He wants to know double digit multiplication. But like my dude, we're still adding, like relax. You know what I'm saying? Like he learned how to read. So like he can read, like I can give him a college level book and he can read the words. But like with him, it's like comprehension. It's like, okay, calm down. You can read these words very fast, but like, do you know what they mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I respect that in him. And I think that that's like a powerful trait, like his level of competition, his overall competency, like his ability to like learn is up there. And so like I like to tell him, like he's super into sports. So he's like, one day he wants to be a basketball player, the next day he wants to be like a boxer or whatever. But I like, I just be throwing out random shit to him. One time I told him, I was like, but don't you want to be an astronaut? Astronauts make money. The conversation with him is like, about the psychology of wealth without even exactly saying that. I'm like, you know what wealthy people do? Wealthy people read every day. Wealthy people pay attention. Wealthy people speak less and listen more. And he's like, yeah. that's what wealthy people do, because I've taught him the difference between rich and wealthy,
Rich and wealthy. Yep.
you know.
Key.
But he's dope.
Key.
He's gonna be great. He
He
already
already is.
he already is. Okay, wait. It's 9 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock, Chicago time. I just need to ask you one question. Is my favorite question to ask. On the Elouise Show, we talk to Black people about Black things from different perspectives. And what I would like to know from you is, what is your favorite part of being a Black male hailing from Chicago in 2020?
I gotta say the diversity, man. I think that no matter what they try or what they try to tell us we can always transcend and exceed their expectations, and we can never be in just this box for what Black is. Like, you could be Black and like R&B, but you can also be Black and like country. You could be Black and like to go out to the club, but you can also be a homebody as well. It's like, no matter what anyone says, just being Black in itself is such a beautiful thing, because we can be everything. So.
Ashe, my guy. Okay, well, Hasani, I would like to thank you for joining today's Elouise Show. Okay,
Thanks for having me.
7. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. Anyone who is watching today, thank you so much for, for watching and listening.
Love. Appreciate you.
Ciao.